right off the bat, I want to go into this one here. So let's just say you get a phone call from the establishment left and establishment right elites. They call you. Mike, we need your help. We have 13 days left of election in the States. November 5th is around the corner. We've tried defamation of character, didn't work. We've tried using the DOJ, he didn't drop out. We've tried assassination attempt, he looked right, and we missed him. We've tried humiliating him in front of his family, and they're still united. We've tried humiliating him in front of his wife is still right next to him. We've tried pinning his voters against him, and they're even more loyal to him. We've tried impeaching him, it got his people more loyal to him. We've tried arresting this guy and doing a mugshot thinking that was it because he'd be the first one. He used it against us, and his popularity went higher. We try to deplete his savings with all the lawsuits that we put together. He's still there. We've tried every single thing that we've done, okay? We used the pandemic as a way to shut down everything in a creative way. Whatever. Let's just say they didn't, what happened in 2020, that worked. However, we can't use that now. We need you to think like Dr. Evil. If you're able to figure out a solution for us, again, being a devil's advocate here, you have a get out of jail card for the rest of your life. Okay, let's just say they're going to offer that to you. Obviously, for you, it wouldn't work. Anyways, I'm just saying, play that part. To think how the opponent or the enemy would, use a way to prevent him from winning the next 13 days, what creative tools is left that they haven't used yet?
Oh, well, there's so many. I mean, some of them are on the censorship side, but I would say at this point with Elon firmly at the helm of X and with Zuckerberg actually loosening a lot of the censorship techniques and actually firing a lot of the established back channel connections that the blob, this sort of DOD, IC, State Department and financial stakeholder complex that's against Trump is driving at, with those options being a lot less than they were 4 years ago. Even though they're trying now through these international regulations like this EU censorship law, and they're planning to do this in 140 countries now. It's insane, but sort of a side story. I actually think the most direct threat, the thing that they are planning to do, is easiest to understand through the lens of an organization called the Transition Integrity Project, which was set up by this individual who was a former high-ranking Pentagon official with a CIA blue badge, who organized exactly what you talked about. The former head of the DNC, Donna Brazile. Yeah, that's the one. And if you run a search on my X handle for TIP, I can walk you through the actual screenshots showing this absolutely diabolical plan that they had for 2020 and that they've already wargamed for 2024. But if you put in BLM, it'll pull up some of these screenshots. Or maybe if you refresh or something, sometimes it takes a minute to. So let's see. If you scroll down, you'll see. Okay, so that's one of the screenshots right here, where so in this simulation they had Donna Brazile, the former head of the DNC, part of your scenario, and Michael Steele, the Never Trump former head of the GOP, who are both a part of this war game. And you'll see who personally role-played Joe Biden in this 2020 election coup simulator war game was none other than John Podesta, the Hillary Clinton campaign manager, who was then promoted to run the largest slush fund in the entire federal government of the Biden White House, in charge of $375 billion in climate funds, personally role-playing Joe Biden. So if you keep scrolling, actually, I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about. And this is, I think, going to be shocking to a lot of people if you haven't seen this before. But scroll down. Okay, so that's the thread right there. So if you, and there's a whole thread around this. But if you just click that image, I'll just show you what this is. So here's what happened in June 2020, just about a week after the George Floyd protests broke out in Minneapolis. A gaggle of high-ranking military, CIA, State Department, and political insiders all met in Washington in order to wargame a scenario in which Trump lost the election but clung to power. So they contemplated the need for a way to overthrow his government, to basically do a counter coup in case he did a coup, if he clung to power, if he used the military, if he just didn't respect the election results. And they ran 4 simulations around this. One of these was called a clear Biden win. The second one was too close to tell, but the third one was called clear Trump win. And they wargamed how to get Trump out of office, even if he legitimately won the Electoral College. And make no mistake, this entire thing was 100% never Trump. The appendix at the back of it was called How to Stop Trumpism After Trump, meaning even after they defeated Trump, how do you eliminate Trumpism from the GOP? Now, here's how diabolical this plan was in 2020. So 13 times in the 17-page document, they call for a need to take to the streets, to control perceptions of public legitimacy, to censor the internet so that perceptions of a Joe Biden illegitimate presidency would be minimized. At the time, they were already contemplating that the only way Joe Biden could win would be through what they called the red mirage blue shift, that Trump would win on election night, but it would be a red mirage because it would shift blue as mail-in ballots were counted and states would flip. And they knew that this was going to cause havoc in the minds of Americans because nothing like this had ever happened, where you have multiple states flipping overnight, people popping champagne the night before and then waking up and finding actually their opponent is present. So they wanted to pre-censor public conceptions that Joe Biden's victory would be illegitimate. And so what they did is they had this plan to wrangle the legacy media, the broadcast media, to the social media companies, and that this network would descend on all the social media companies to get every single one of them to pass a new terms of service violation called delegitimization, which meant if you posted on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube or Reddit or Twitch, anywhere on one of the major 15 platforms that they targeted, that you didn't believe that mail-in ballots were safe and reliable, you had a problem with early voting drop boxes, you had a problem with electronic voting machines or voter tabulation issues, that would be a terms of service violation, and either your post would get flagged, you'd get deboosted in the algorithm, your account could get suspended. Remove, reduce, inform is what they call this. Basically ban, deboost, and then, fact-checking interstitials that limit the virality.
Remove, reduce, what was the last one?
Remove, reduce, inform.
Inform.
Right. Those are basically the levels of how hard the ban hammer you get hit with. And what they did is they got a direct partnership. This is one of the groups that was operating sort of parallel to TIP, was a group called EIP, the Election Integrity Partnership. They had a formal partnership with the Department of Homeland Security, and they targeted tens of millions of tweets. They said, 2.5 million or something for Stop the Steal. They bragged on tape about setting up the tech platforms to be able to take stuff down quickly. They did an
autopsy. Who bragged on tape? When you say they, who are
the
they?
Election Integrity Partnership? It was a consortium of 4 different outside entities. Because
what was the biggest name? Who was the biggest name in that recording?
The technical lead was the Stanford Internet Observatory, who just got its plug pulled by Stanford after all these scandals. But the most significant was the Atlantic Council of these 4. The Atlantic Council has 7 CIA directors currently serving on its board of directors. Current former #1 heads of the CIA, 7 of them, all on the board of this one. It's NATO's think tank is how it effectively bills itself. It gets annual funding, over $1 million a year from the Pentagon, over $1 million a year from the State Department, plus money from a web of CIA cutouts like the National Endowment for Democracy. It is basically a military intelligence back channel for NATO to be able to coordinate civilian side changes to laws and society. So another one of those 4 partners was a group called Graphica, which has gotten over $7 million in Pentagon funding. It was incubated in the Pentagon's Minerva Initiative, which is the Psychological Operations Research Center. So this is a literal Pentagon psyops firm. And previously, this same network had done all these training sessions to hundreds of journalists about how to flag Trump tweets. If he just when he tweeted witch hunt about Russiagate, they would train journalists in different predicates for how to argue it should be censored on social media. But what they called for in this simulation was, if Trump were to win fair and square, we can still use this coup power, even if he doesn't. So it's not a counter coup to stop a coup. We'll just do it to coup him out of office, and we'll do it in the following way. We will make the argument that the constitutional basis of the Electoral College is illegitimate. And by the way, you're already seeing that again this year. If folks remember the spate of headlines that you've seen recently in the news, the New York Times calling to torch the Constitution, the Washington Post saying the Constitution is the biggest threat to democracy, the Dean of Berkeley Law School coming out and saying we need to end the Electoral College. This is priming. This is setting you up for the argument that they're going to make if Trump wins fair and square on November 5th. Now, what they did is they said simultaneous with this legal argument that we are going to argue that the popular vote should determine the election instead of the electoral vote, we're going to destabilize the country and inflict so much pain on people's day-to-day life, so much pain on the governance of the system that people are going to clamor effectively for the easy way out, which is going to be this popular vote method. And they had a few ways that this war game went through doing that. Some of them involved state secession. California, Oregon, and Washington would effectively secede. They would not respect the federal government, the typical federalism relationship between states and governments. So you would have the governors come out and effectively secede. They would form this alliance. You would have, and very importantly and significantly on screen here, you're seeing a show of numbers in the streets, and actions in the streets may be decisive factors in determining what the public perceives as a just and legitimate outcome. So again, this is right after the BLM riot breakout.
Who wrote this, by the way?
This was the Transition Integrity Project. This was Rosa Brooks's. She's currently at Georgetown Law, but she was, I think, Undersecretary of Defense or Assistant Secretary. Okay. She was a high-level Obama Pentagon official with a CIA blue badge, according to her own book, and what you'll see here, if you go back and just look at these receipts, because it's so damning, what they say is that they would leverage the destabilization power of racial justice activists, and they just assumed that in this war game, BLM and Antifa and the Sunrise movements would all respond to a quote Biden call to take to the streets. So they presupposed that they would do that, but they said we did not robustly test this. So in the next 5 months, we need to capacity build them. And this is on another page here, but again, this is all on my timeline. And what they say is we need to build strong ties with these organizations. And then later they say we need to fund them. We need to resource them so that they will be, quote, be responsive to the movement's demands and be responsive to a Biden call to take to the streets. And so this paramilitary street muscle is part and parcel of every intelligence operation that involves a ground-up, people-powered overthrow of a government. There's two ways that you can overthrow a government. You can do a top-down military coup from the generals. And by the way, Rosa Brooks, in January 2017, the first month of Trump being in office, wrote an op-ed where she said 3 ways to get rid of Trump before the 2024 election. This is before Trump's first week had even transpired. 3 ways to get rid of him before the 2024 election. But buried at the bottom of this was a 4th way, which she called for was a military coup, which she acknowledged had never been done in our country's history and would be a black mark on our country's legacy, but it might be necessary to stop Trump, that we might need a top-down military coup coming from a high-ranking military official from the previous administration. But what they call for is this street paramilitary presence to take over federal buildings, to block streets, to block highways, to get the unions involved. And so the whole country would ground to a halt, and people would clamor for the different government in the same way that happens in every CIA coup when you are economically destabilizing the country, when you are surrounding the parliament building with protesters, and when you are making the people hungry and desperate so they will agree to a new government different than the one they elected.
This is documented. This is public. It's not like they're shameless about it.
Yes.
They're not even something that they're hiding from you.
They were fundraising off of it.
Okay, so this is the tweet. If you can go to it, Rob, from the top, because what we just showed was number 17, part of zoom in a little bit. So this is the thread you put up together. What other part of this do you want to show that shows what else they asked about?
Well, there's one, if you go to, there's so much here, but, and it's worth noting that recently, Rosa Brooks published, I believe in The Guardian, that one of the things they currently lack right now is this same public protest power that they had in 2020. They sort of lamented that they don't have the same capacity right now to leverage off of that they had in 2020 about this street destabilization capacity.
Okay, let me go back to the question. All right, so the question is, if you were hired by the establishment elites on the left and the right to find a way in the next 13, 14 days to prevent him from winning in all the ways they've tried it with the DOJ humiliation, defamation of character, Stormy Daniels, taking away money, depleting cash, all that stuff hasn't worked. What would be the way for you to get it done? One, you said through this. Okay, now let me give my rebuttal to it. My rebuttal to that strategy working in 2020 that maybe won't work today is Musk buys Twitter. X has opened up. It's where everybody's getting their news, that even Mark Cuban is getting torched by everybody else there, that he can't gaslight everybody else. Before, a lot of people that are challenging him back would have certainly been removed, reduced, or informed, right? And they're not doing that today because he's running Twitter. So if we were to say, well, who's been censored lately? I don't know a lot of people that have been censored lately, like the way they did in 2020, 2020. We used to get strikes left and right in 2020, 2021. YouTube's even slowed down a little bit because they're worried about Rumble, Twitter. They have more competition than ever before. Zuckerberg 3 months ago comes out and posts that letter saying we were pushed by the Biden-Harris administration for us to do X, Y, Z. And at the end of the day, it is my fault. I take full responsibility. He gives that message. Part of it could be because he thinks Trump's going to get elected. I better be good on his side, or else they can really come after me. And what if they, find out additional things that I've done? Okay, so set that part aside. He's being nice today. And he's like, I'm more like a libertarian. I've been hanging out with the UFC guys. So that was a threat because he blocked Trump. YouTube blocked Trump. Twitter suspended and blocked Trump. He's open now everywhere. He can tweet as much as he wants. No one's blocking him anymore. So that Section 230 part right now, they can't impose that strong because they're worried about Elon and Trump winning, okay? And they can come back. And now Trump's somehow, some way, TikTok is kind of on his side because one of the bigger investors there, you know the story about TikTok as well, so I don't want to go there. So now we got TikTok playing neutral. They're still nasty. They still block a lot. I get the most things blocked on TikTok. Community guidelines, bullshit. They're number one. Twitter, free. Google, Facebook a little bit easier. Then you have Google, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to be that effective today. What I'm trying to find out in 2024, how do you do it? How do you do it in 2024 to prevent the election from happening on November 5th? You saw Maricopa County earlier today saying, hey, we're already announcing we're going to need additional days. We've hired a bunch of different staff. Okay, that's a nice little way of putting it out there that, hey, you're not going to win this place here. We're going to give this to XYZ. But Pennsylvania, Carolina, Georgia, and all the charts show if they have Trump wins Pennsylvania and Georgia, it's over with, right?
Right.
What do you do? What's another tool in your arsenal?
Well, listen to Jamie Raskin. Jamie Raskin in Congress has said, let people vote for Trump if they want. We're not going to certify his election anyway. So he may be elected, but we're not going to let him be inaugurated.
When did he say that?
This is like 2 months ago. You can pull up the Jamie
this
Raskin. I think that's probably the one.
Play it, Rob.
Again, it's necessary, but it's not sufficient because what can be put into the Constitution can slip away from you very quickly. And the greatest example going on right now before our very eyes is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which they're just disappearing with a magic wand, as if it doesn't exist, even though it could not be clearer what it's stating. And so, they want to kick it to Congress. So it's going to be up to us on January 6, 2025 to tell the rampaging Trump mobs that he's disqualified. And then we need bodyguards for everybody in civil war conditions, all because the 9 justices, not all of them, but these justices who have not many cases to look at every year, not that much work to do, a huge staff, great protection, simply do not want to do their job and interpret what the great 14th Amendment means. And I'm glad that Sherilyn's creating her new center so we can bring that.
So if you go to my X handle and you type in provoke breakdown, you're going to see that he referenced basically they're going to provoke a breakdown on January 6th. Now, this is very interesting. So here you go. I think this is one, right? Clear Trump win. This is the scenario. Now, if you go to the next screenshot, you'll see what it says there in yellow highlights with the red highlight. Again, this was in June 2020, being organized by military, intelligence, State Department, and high-level political operatives from both sides of the aisle. Again, both the former heads of the both major political parties who were both anti-Trump. And one of the most consequential moves in their war game for how to make sure Biden was inaugurated, even if Trump was elected, was that Team Biden role-played by no less than John Podesta, who would then occupy this very senior slot in the Biden administration, White House. One of the most consequential moves was that Team Biden on January 6th provoked a breakdown in the joint session of Congress by getting the House of Representatives to agree to award the presidency to Biden based on the alternative pro-Biden submissions sent by pro-Biden governors. This is what they're planning to do. They're going to make the argument that Donald Trump is disqualified under the 14th Amendment because of January 6th, and then they will do the exact same.
How likely is it they're going to do that?
I think it depends on how robust the consensus building has been for this and how much infighting there is in the Democrat camp. I think that the ire between the Biden and Harris camp has disunified some of these networks that have sort of reluctantly given in to some of the recent Trump momentum. But it's hard to know right now because a lot of these tools would not be played while Biden, Harris is still the occupants of the White House. They would not, for example, deploy street mobilization protests to burn federal buildings or police precincts or put the country in crisis while the person they want to win is occupying the White House. So it's unclear how robust the infrastructure is underneath the surface because they're not going to launch the surface attack until Trump wins an electoral college victory. But this is absolutely what they're planning. And by the way, they tried this in 2016. In 2016, they got about 13 or 16 alternate electors to not certify Trump's election then. But that was 8 years ago. It's unclear how much more reach they've gotten into that, but that is what this legal network is planning, whether they can pull it off or whether it costs them too much legitimacy.
It's not going to work, though. It's not going to work because the Supreme Court, he's got it, right? Is it, 5-4 right now or 6-3? I don't know what this is not going to be done without Supreme Court saying, relax, guys. You're acting a little bit out of control. He's the president. Go cry a little bit and you'll get over it.
Well, two things on that. One is, remember, it was this Supreme Court which voted 7-2 not to actually hear Trump's questions about the last election, about election fraud. That was Trump's legal team applied for cert to the Supreme Court, and it was 7-2. They voted not to hear the case. So the Supreme Court actually basically did not support, Trump's even ability to air that evidence publicly. And then the second thing is they are simultaneously launching this operation against the Supreme Court. They've opened these sort of ethics probes into Clarence Thomas. They are reopening, the lines of attack against Kavanaugh. I think part of this is to try to induce sort of tacit personal threats to the family, the stability, the reputation, the legacy of the Supreme Court justices so that they do not intercede on whatever operation they're going to be trying to run at the congressional level.
Okay, so that's one. Let's set that aside. January 26, 2025, we're going to say this. And he said civil war, right? Mm-hmm. Protection, et cetera, et cetera. If they go that route, okay, let's just say they go that route, and they're dumb enough and hate America enough to want to go there and can't stand this guy that much and fear him so much that they want to go there. What happens the 7th? What happens to America? You think the opposite side is going to sit there and be okay with it? Like 2020 will be elementary compared to what's going to happen in 2024, right? Don't you think it's going to be that level of intensity where it goes? I don't know if that's going to die out a day, 2 days, a week, 2 weeks later. What do you think?
Well, the issue is these people are specialists in counterinsurgency. So many of these people come from DOD counterinsurgency operations. They come from, the sort of CIA intelligence, insurgency, counterinsurgency world. And what you're counterinsurgency is basically a state of civil war in a country where the preferred regime of the U.S. government is being threatened politically or sometimes kinetically by an insurgent political force within the country who wants to either topple that government or elect a different government. And the U.S. military and the U.S. statecraft apparatus descends on the country to quell the insurgency. And the end goal of an insurgency is not to wipe the whole thing out. It's to reduce it to a burning ember and to effectively nip the heads of the sunflowers so that nothing can grow that's robust. You can't end the ideology, But what you can do is you can neutralize all of its capacities to convert into a successful political election. And this is what they are trying to do right now. There's something called the 65 Project, which folks may have heard of. This is basically a political black ops hit job operation to disbar all 65 attorneys who had some role in representing Donald Trump's election integrity lawsuits. Rudy Giuliani, for example, just this week was hit with I think a $150 million defamation case just for talking about some election workers, I believe, in Georgia. Had to sell his grandfather's watch. And remember, he was disbarred in the state of New York just for representing the president. The same thing happened to John Eastman in the state of California. If you've got no lawyers, because they've got basically a black ops, political, heart attack gun to the temple of every lawyer who can represent the administration to combat this, then you've got no legal representation. You've got no access to the law.
I'm not even thinking about that. You're going to the other side, right? I'm talking about the day-to-day people. I'm not talking about, what they did to Giuliani and what they did to all his people, and they targeted every one of his guys. If you were somebody that was a Trump, support, if you didn't flip on them, they sued you to get rid of they destroyed a lot of people's lives. A lot of people's lives they destroyed, right? I'm talking about the everyday, day-to-day person in America that's voting for this guy, that thinks you guys are out of your mind that you're going to do this to my country.
Hi, this is Mike Benz. You can connect with me on Connect for any questions that you have on internet censorship, foreign policy, national security, the blob, or if you want to know what a particular institution is doing that you may have seen or have questions about in terms of its control over the information ecosystem. So connect with me on Connect.
If you enjoyed this video, you want to watch more videos like this, click here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click here.